everybody. My name is Sean. I'm the owner of One With Nature. I trust you've been well. I've done a bit of traveling since my last video. It's good to get away every so often, especially if it's a trip to the beach. The coast here is beautiful, but my favorite coastline so far is still the island of Bonaire. Met some interesting people on my trip, as always. But it's good to be back, and today we are going to talk about Schisandra Berry. Schisandra Berry will be our first adaptogen that I'm going to go over, just the basics of the berry and the seed. If you don't know what an adaptogen is, pause the video, check out the video description. The definition is down there. I have repeated it so many times, I cannot do it again. But over the years, I've received many questions about adaptogens. Sean, I bought 7 adaptogens and I mixed them all together. How much do I take every day? Sean, I just took 3 months worth of herbs in 2 days. I'm feeling kind of spaced out. What do I do now? I'm not kidding. These are all actually happening. Sean, are raisins an adaptogen? No. So I'm going to make some videos about the basics of adaptogens and cover a few of my favorite adaptogen botanicals, adaptogenic substances. And then when I get questions in the future, I can just refer people here. It's going to save everybody a lot of time. So we don't have very many true adaptogens. It's a very small class. We have American ginseng, Panax ginseng, ashwagandha, Eleuthero, rhodiola, Maral Root, cordyceps mushroom, mumio. Some people refer to it as shilajit or shilajit. And then today's topic, Schisandra. So quite a selection there. 6 roots of fungi, a black gooey substance, and then Schisandra, which is the only berry and the only seed to be found so far. That could change at any time. But so far, it's the only one I'm aware of, which fulfills the definition of a true adaptogen found in the video description. So I drew a triangle here because they're fun to draw. And I like triangles because physically, from the outside, human beings are basically just a bunch of triangles put together. So it seems appropriate. Inside this triangle, I want you to imagine every medicinal herb, root, bark, fruit, seed, whatever. From acai and agrimony to ziziphus and whatever begins with a Z. Za'atar, the Arabic spice, za'atar. They're all in this triangle. So we have all of these medicinal herbs, and right here at the very apex of the capstone here are all the adaptogens that we currently have to work with when people come to us for help, which is every day. And it's the little dot right there. You can't even see it. Those are the true adaptogens. But now if we expand this to include probable adaptogens, possible adaptogens, herbs which blend well with adaptogens, then it looks like this. Still can't see anything. So this is a very small elite class of substances. All adaptogens are not the same. They all have different energetic qualities. Rhodiola, for example, is very drying. It will dry your tissues out. You give rhodiola to somebody with Sjogren syndrome, they're going to hunt you down and pull your head off. They're going to feel like a walking piece of beef jerky. But American ginseng generates fluid, so it'd be good for somebody with this condition. And Panax ginseng is moistening as well. Panax ginseng, prepared like Korean red ginseng root, is very stimulating, but Schisandra is calming. Handing out adaptogens like candy is, I don't recommend it. Around 10 years ago, 12 years ago, it seemed like that's what a lot of people were doing. I will recreate it for you. We're going to play a game. It's called the Wheel of Adaptogens. It's amazing. The Wheel of Adaptogens. Somebody comes in. Hey, how's it going? I'm really tired lately. You need an adaptogen. You need an adaptogen. Okay, don't move. Let me get my adaptogen finder. Okay, so we're going to spin the wheel of adaptogens. And Schisandra. we're going to give you 2 weeks worth of Schisandra. Tell him what he's won, Bob. Schisandra. Okay? So we're going to hook you up with 2 weeks worth of Schisandra. Tell us how you're doing in 2 weeks, okay? Don't forget to pay for your supplements on the way out. Thank you. Have a nice day. Yeah. It's pretty much what it was like. When we understand the energetics, and more importantly, when we understand the person that's coming to us for help, it makes us better able to find somebody who, to find an adaptogen that can be paired to the person. For years, I've said that herbs are like cheat codes for life. And this applies to adaptogens as well. In fact, there is no class of herbs that surpassed the cheat code abilities of adaptogens. That's why the Soviet military spent so much time researching. Well, first it was drugs. They were just giving drugs to soldiers, to citizens, to make them stay awake as long as humanly possible. They wanted to make them stronger, faster. We can rebuild him. But eventually the research on plants started full speed, looking for any plant which could fortify a person so they could be a more resilient soldier or a better worker in some depressing Soviet factory, working 60 or more, 80 hours a week, whatever. So they were looking for and studying. At the time, they didn't know they were adaptogens, but they looked at Panax Ginseng, then Eleuthero, Eleutherococcus, senticosus, Maral Root, Rhaponticum, carthamoides. I think that's changed by now. And then Schisandra Berry, Schisandra chinensis, and then a lot of others as well. So some made the cut, others didn't. And that's where our information in the beginning about adaptogens originally came from, human testing. We probably don't want to know the extent of human testing, what it was like in Soviet Russia in the mid-1950s, because the military is not bound by certain rules which apply to civilians or other areas. So you can be sure that when the military gave test subjects adaptogens or suspected adaptogens, and then studied how the person reacted to stress, the testing was undoubtedly quite rigorous. And I'm being kind using that word. Adaptogens are an elite class of substances, but this is a double-edged sword for a few important reasons. Sean's first law of adaptogen states the more powerful the effects of an adaptogen on the person using it, the greater the possibility of that adaptogen being misused. What do I mean? If someone comes to you for help and you figure out they have, let's say, core energy depletion, you will suggest the usual suspects of lifestyle changes, diet changes, changes to sleep. It can be quite lengthy. Then you move on to include, let's say, American ginseng or Eleuthero or Schisandra Berry and Seed, which are all true adaptogens. And you give them one or a combination of adaptogens plus other herbs that you feel are appropriate for that individual, because we don't treat the label that someone has slapped on the person. We treat the person themselves. And it works great for this person. They couldn't be happier, but they do not change the bad habits in their life, which was the sole cause of them coming to you for help in the first place. So this person is not falling victim to the random variables of nature here. I'll put it another way. It's their fault. Because eventually the American ginseng, or whatever you gave them, it's swimming upstream against all of this person's diet choices, all the bad diet choices, all of the person's poor sleep habits, all of the stress that this person is currently unnecessarily subjecting themselves to. And then they fall to pieces again. They come looking for help all over again. So there is a dark side to using herbs as cheat codes, because for all the good that they can do for human health, it softens the wake-up call to make changes that people sometimes so desperately need. And then they get in trouble all over again. So sometimes the only second chance you get in life is to make the same mistake twice. as the screenwriter says. So sometimes we learn the hard way. But as long as you're aware of that and you take steps to mitigate that particular outcome, you're not going to have that particular problem. Let's just say you're going to minimize that particular problem. So let's get the Schisandra Berry and seed. Wuweza grows from the Schisandra plant. It is a woody vine. It will start growing on a piece of vegetation or a trellis and just take off 20, 30 feet high. It's very popular all over the world. When I was in Korea, South Korea, I was wandering the streets of Seoul. It was the last week of December. It was pretty cold. And you would see all these vendors standing in the cold, and they would have their wares on these narrow tables lining the sidewalks. And all of a sudden, I see exactly what I've been searching for. Somebody is selling all different types of herbs, roots, barks, and sure enough, there's a good amount of Schisandra berry there for sale. I think if I can find a picture, I'll put it up here. So I purchased a bag of Schisandra berries. I still have them. That's my idea of a souvenir. The thing is, you're not going to waste your time trying to sell something in the freezing cold with limited space unless you know that item will sell, because it's taking up valuable real estate on your small table in the bitter winds of winter. And you have to carry this stuff through the streets and set up your containers and signs. It's not easy. It sells, it's there for sale because it works, it's popular. There's an acute awareness of Schisandra berry in this part of the world, and you'll see men and women shopping for herbs for their family. And then the next week I saw the same thing in China all over again. And in that part of the world, Schisandra's popularity is not the sole result of a well-oiled propaganda machine. It's not marketing. It's because Schisandra helps a lot of people. Schisandra berry is well known as the 5-flavored fruit. Wuweza, sweet, salty, pungent, sour, bitter. And when you add in the Schisandra seed, which is missing in many preparations, you get another taste sensation. The seed has this acute, sharp taste. And many people will notice this sensation of a tingling coming up the back of the head and then forward across the top of the skull within a few seconds of taking an extract with Schisandra seed in it. Schisandra berry and a lot of Schisandra seed. Not everybody, but in my experience, a lot. Especially if that Schisandra seed extract has been created and then added in separately to a Schisandra berry tincture or extract. And this would be in a concentration which is absent from naturally occurring amounts, be a lot more. You'll feel it in the back of your throat. It'll probably produce an involuntary shiver, which can be a sign of its effect on the central nervous system. It's powerful stuff. I'll be talking more about the Schisandra seed in a little bit, but Schisandra berry, and I'm including the seed in this, like all true adaptogens, it has a pronounced and positive effect on the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Right here, right behind the eyes is where you'll find this. The hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenals, they all work together in harmony, ideally. That's what should be happening. But Schisandra berry helps your nervous system calm down and chill out. I think that's something that a lot of people need after the last 3 years. Schisandra berry modulates immune activity as well. Schisandra berry is well known for helping with liver, aiding and supporting the liver, immune support, mental cognition, memory enhancement, resistance to various stressors, physical, mental, emotional, chemical, heavy metal, radiation, probably as well. It can stimulate the mind without giving you the jitters like coffee often will. Schisandra puts you in a calm state of mind, but still enhances the power of concentration, like a game of chess or an interesting conversation with someone. The mind is sharp, but the body is relaxed, unless you're losing the game of chess or you're arguing with the person in the conversation. But Schisandra helps with abstract thinking. If you took a good amount of Schisandra Berry tincture or Schisandra Seed tincture before taking an IQ test, I have no doubt that it would add a few points to your final score. Schisandra Berry is an ally for the liver. It's also anti-inflammatory. Can help with certain respiratory issues, asthma, in certain conditions. So this is a formidable herbal friend to have on your side. Around 12 years or more ago, a man contacts me, says his daughter has no energy, tired all the time, sleeping 16 hours a day, or she cannot get to sleep at all. Some of you already know where this is going. Doctors submit her to test after test, nothing. Whole list of symptoms. Chronic fatigue, catches colds easily. She's 17 years old. She has no energy. So I'm reading this and I'm just waiting for the final piece of the puzzle to click into place. There's something missing and it always shows up. So I ask for more details. Turns out she's been training in competitive powerlifting for years. And there it is. I tell the father she has adrenal fatigue, which is a term, I don't like that term. It's a term I've used in videos. It's not a preferred term at all. It's a generic catch-all term, but a lot of people have heard it. It's high concept. People hear, oh, adrenal fatigue. Okay, I understand. What's an adrenal? But I guess adrenal atrophy would probably be a little bit better as far as a generic catch-all term. So I tell the father she has adrenal burnout. He says, highly doubt it. All right, maybe I'm wrong, you know? I'm not a teenager anymore. I knew everything back then. You should have asked me back then. But a short time later, like a half hour, he sends me another email. He says, I think you're onto something. Starts giving me more details. She's a big fan of energy drinks. I was like, oh my God. So I sent an email back. I said, it's all coming together now. I've seen this many times. Her adrenals are stressed out. They're constantly putting out, but nothing's coming back in to nourish them. So to make a long story short, she was sent herbal formulas. A little bit of time passes. I go to my P.O. box, and what do I find? This magazine with the daughter on the cover. There she is, first powerlifter to win the AAU Teen Sullivan Scholarship, Athletic Scholarship. She even autographed it for me. So, and the formula which put her over the top was an adrenal formula with high amounts of Schisandra Berry in it. Now, there were other ingredients, but there is no doubt in my mind the Schisandra Berry is what turned her around so quickly. And it wasn't that long that she was taking it, that she was able to do this. And she's won dozens of titles, world champion, been on ESPN, Fox. Impressive person. So years later, I was talking to her dad on the phone, and I guess they were moving stuff. Maybe they were moving stuff in preparation for her going to college or moving out of the house or something. But they found a partial bottle of that herbal formula that was heavy on Schisandra Berry. Helped her recover, gain her strength. And she said, that's the formula that saved my life. And her dad told me that personally. So I have seen this over and over and over again with children. I had a video up 3.5 years ago, how to make your kidneys and adrenals happy. In that video, I said that it's not unusual for children, teenagers to get adrenal issues as well. It's not just adults. And in that video, I said it happens all the time, but that's another video. Well, this is now that video. And 3.5 years later, better late than never. But kids training in sports, school wants to win a title, they push the kids. Football, 2-a-days in the summer heat. Well, at the end of the day, what happens? Here come the coolers filled with sports drinks, loaded with chemicals, sugars, snacks, loaded with vegetable seed oils to reward the kids at the end of a training or practice training game. I've seen it over and over. Latchkey kids with no parental oversight, poor diet. Got a phone call one day, again, this is years ago. Nice lady on the other end of the phone tells me her 16-year-old daughter has been in gymnastics for years, and I don't have to hear the rest of the sentence. I'm pretty sure I know what she's about to say. It's either ligament, tendon, connective tissue issues, or she has core energy burnout. Her adrenals need fed, and they're not getting it. Overtraining for years, improper diet. It catches up to you. So the lady continues, daughter sleeps for 16 hours a day, has no energy, gets sick easily, gets colds easily. Sound familiar? So I ask about all the usual suspects. Is she getting restful sleep? Do you guys know what restful sleep is? Most people don't. So restful sleep, what is she eating? Any medications going on that I should know about? And people get frustrated when you ask a lot of questions. They want a one-stop shopping experience. Sean, give me the name of an herb, tell me where to buy it, and I'm out of here. It doesn't work that way. You help the person, not the label that somebody has slapped on them. And we need to ask questions to get information. Adults need information. So eventually I tell her vitamin C for the adrenals, vitamin B5, pantothenic acid for the adrenals, and Schisandra Berry for the adrenals as well. If the girl doesn't like Schisandra Berry, then she's young enough to use Eleuthero, another fantastic adaptogen for teens. It's really great. It's mild. It's neutral. Is it cooling? No, not really. Is it drying? Not really. Warming? No, not really. Moistening? No, it's neutral. So you have to take a lot over a good amount of time of Eleuthero now to see results. Unless it's a 1-to-1 ratio, 2-to-1 ratio, 3-to-1 ratio. And then you got to make sure it's really Eleuthero. It's not adulterated. And it's going to be expensive. So anyways, I tell her Eleuthero, Schisandra, she can try that. Week later, I get an email. Daughter's been taking Schisandra Berry for 3 days, feels fantastic. Better than before, getting restful sleep, and later on she was able to continue with the gymnastics training. Diet changes were suggested, vitamins were suggested, minerals were suggested. Did they do anything besides the Schisandra Berry? I have no idea. So let me get some paperwork here. Yeah, okay. So about 12 years ago, a lady contacts me. She is at her wit's end, and guess what her symptoms are? No energy, tired all the time, life is miserable. Now she has something additional, pain. Okay, pain. She is almost at rock bottom. I didn't know how rock bottom until quite some time later, and I'll get into that in a minute. I'm not going to say what she was dealing with, but it rhymes with lemon and limes. So I suggested teasel root, Solomon seal, just to start for the connective tissue and joint pain. These help her a bit. It is slow going for months, but hope is growing. Along the way, more specific herbs are added in for her condition. Sarsaparilla, gotukola for the inflamed epithelial cells in the gut mucosa. It takes a while, but the positive effects accumulate over time. She's getting better. In fact, she makes several large life changes. She sells her house, moves to a completely different state, studies to become a massage therapist because now that she's feeling better, she's inspired to want to help other people. And that, I have a feeling, is the teasel root talking, most likely. I've seen that over and over. Person is in a reality tunnel. Every day repeats endlessly, no variation. Your former passions and ideals, you're forced to put those on hold for a while. Or they are abandoned completely because maybe the person has chronic pain, a chronic fatigue. You don't have the luxury of doing anything outside of simply trying to survive from day to day. You start taking the teasel root, you start feeling better, and the old passions and ideals come back. Or you just take off on a completely different life path like this lady did. People who take the Chinese herb biplurum or burplerum, as I've heard people call it, if they take that for liver issues, you'll see life changes sometimes there as well. But you need to fuel the core energy to see these changes through on the other side. You got to take care of the invader first, apply the adaptogens afterwards, unless it's American ginseng. And I'll talk about that in my American ginseng adaptogen video. So it's at this time that I suggest to her the adrenal formula with the Schisandra berry as the main ingredient, the same formula that helped the powerlifter. And it really helped her. Everything started moving into place for her. For her, this was the formula for her. Years after she first contacted me, she sends me an email and she's talking about this long road that she's traveled. And I wanted to quote her accurately, so I printed it out. The herbs have been the cornerstone of my regaining health, and I look back in horror to the days when I was truly enfeebled and getting worse without any solutions in sight. I think I would have died or given up and suicided if I hadn't been given the gift of healing. That is a powerful but true statement. And that's what she wrote to me. Out of everything that she ever tried, and she tried, by her own admission, she tried a lot of stuff before she ever contacted me. It was the adrenal formula with Schisandra Berry. That's what she gives the credit most of all to helping her in the long run. And it wasn't a lot daily. I'm thinking it was a half a teaspoon twice a day. How does that happen? Because the more a person needs an adaptogen, the more they will respond favorably. Are you running around in the prime of your life and great health? You're going to take an adaptogen, you may not really notice much unless you take something super stimulating like Korean red ginseng and you're 20 years old. Then you're going to notice it. But the more you need it, the more you're going to feel the effects, generally. Now, a basic formula for overall vitality, immune function using adaptogen herbs might be something like Schisandra berry, astragalus, Eleuthero, licorice root, a little bit of American ginseng. And I just personally would throw in some maca root, but it's got to be a 1-to-1, 2-to-1, or even 3-to-1 concentration at a minimum. I used a similar formula for my son. He was venturing into adrenal depletion from intense workouts for high school sports. His entire personality changed. Tired all the time. Going to bed 7:30 at night on the weekends. I didn't like what I was seeing. And the improvement was dramatic. Made him a believer. That's for sure. So I might talk more about that when I do my American ginseng adaptogen video. So I just gave 4 accounts of Schisandra berry helping people with an emphasis on the physical well-being, although there's always an emotional and mental aspect as well when using these herbs. Sometimes these get overshadowed when a person is recovering from severe energy loss and chronic pain. But let's get into the mental side of things and see how Schisandra has helped people with memory, pattern recognition, abstract thinking. I have an email from a man who had a remarkable experience using Schisandra berry for memory enhancement. And I'm going to read it as it was sent to me. So, I have had debilitating memory issues my whole life. Theories why include the horrible forceps used to yank me out of my mother, seriously deforming my head for a while, some form of attention deficit disorder, really bad upbringing, who knows, who cares. All I know is that I would look at a number or whatever on the blackboard, and before my head had finished tilting down, it was gone. If I took a measurement and didn't sing the number out loud repeatedly until I wrote it down, it was gone. There's more, but you get the picture. The other problem was the things I did remember, like song lyrics. They weren't always available to the front side of my awareness. I could see them in my head, but like a dream you just had, I couldn't verbalize them. This was the cause of much frustration and fear throughout my life, not to mention a miserable academic experience. So he stumbles across Schisandra Berry, sees it for sale on a website. Well, you may like the taste, other people may like the taste. I thought it was seriously nasty, but I never waste anything I paid good money for, and it might do something after a while, so I continued to take it until it was almost gone, not really noticing any particular effect or improvement until driving in the car with my son, who had just discovered the Beatles, and a song came on, and I was singing the lyrics to the song effortlessly, as if I'd been practicing all week. A 40-year-old song, and it didn't stop there. I sang every song on the CD. No tightness, no anxiety, no flub-ups. I was building a fort for my kids, and I was taking measurements and waiting up to an hour before making the cuts. I could remember the numbers like a normal person. I can even remember passwords without having to look them up. I had never even realized what an advantage most people had over me all this time until I was functioning the way they did. Needless to say, I take my 3 droppers full of Schisandra Berry every day now. It has made a huge difference in the quality of my life. And I've talked with this man quite a bit, so he's a good guy. So Schisandra Seed, which I mentioned earlier, you'll see people make great strides when they use the Schisandra, just the seed, in separate from the berry. Or you have a Schisandra berry extract where a lot of the Schisandra seed concentrate has been added to the extract, syrup, to saint, whatever, however the person decides to make the formula. So you'd make your Schisandra berry tincture, then you make a separate Schisandra seed tincture, and you add the Schisandra seed tincture into the original Schisandra berry, and you get the best of both worlds. It's a whole process. I'm not doing it justice right now. It's a very specific process. But what an eye-opener for many who try it, that's for sure. Guy who lives in the Pacific Northwest contacted me, again, this is years ago. The Schisandra seed compared to the berry really helped this man with memory, abstract thinking, mental cognition. He used the Schisandra seed for quite some time, and he would send me emails with updates on how it was helping him. And I'd like to read part of an email that he sent me. A strange thing happened. I really didn't expect my memory to get much better. I was already very happy with that and couldn't see how that could get much better. What did happen was unexpected and kind of weird. Let me explain. As a guy gets older, they start to collect stuff in their office and in their garages. I've seen it a million times. These kludges, which I had to look up. What is a kludge? An ill-assorted collection of parts assembled to fulfill a particular purpose. So I learned a new word. These kludges are multiplied by the number of hobbies and children, and they get pretty ridiculous by the time a guy hits 50. I have 6 children, plus paraphernalia for carpentry, electrical, automotive, plumbing, sheetrock, electronics, computers, etc., and I'm over 50. Put another way, I have a hell of a lot of crap, and over the years, I've lost control of that crap, and up to this point, I was pretty hopeless about getting a handle on it. I just resigned myself to being a hoarder. However, I found myself in my workshop looking at several 100,000 miscellaneous bits and pieces piled so deep you could only crawl over the top of it. And I couldn't throw any of that away because each thing had a purpose and a use, if I could ever find it. Well, like solving a Rubik's Cube in your head, I looked at what I could see, and long story short, 5 days later, it was not only cleaned up, but organized and sorted logically. I located and found things that had been separated since day one, and I was able to utilize the space I had in ways I never thought of before. And instead of just getting overwhelmed, I breezed through 25 years of junk and brought order that had never existed in the whole time I owned the stuff. Now, I'm not describing a burst of energy. I didn't really exert myself. I just saw patterns and connections. The weirdness continued when one of the things that got reunited from the mess was an old entanglement puzzle that I had bought 30 years ago, and with the instructions I had managed to take it apart, but I could never put it back together again. So the two pieces had been lost along with the instructions, never to be reunited in one place until a couple days ago. I recognized what the parts were as I went through the stuff, and then later at my desk, I put the two halves of the puzzle together in about 20 minutes, no instructions. I have noticed that the seed extract is much more potent and strangely linear in effect. The more you take, the more it does. I've got to tell you, having a workshop that is usable is a bonus. I never expected in a million years. I thought that ship had sailed long ago. The only downside, my kids love it too. So, we have here a really great example, and I have a lot more. Anybody who does this type of work, if you're listening to this right now, you're just nodding your head. You have a million accounts like this. So Schisandra Seed helps with abstract thinking, cognitive function. And this is why I said earlier that using a Schisandra Berry / seed tincture would most likely enable a person to add a few points onto their IQ test. Whether that's ever been done or not, I have no idea. But it can help a person demonstrably in different spheres: pattern recognition, abstract thinking, standing out at the forefront. Another great herb for memory, concentration, focus, help with anxiety. It's a neuroprotective to the brain, like Schisandra Berry, is the Ayurvedic herb Shankhpushpi. Some people pronounce it Shankhapushpi. It's well known, but still not a lot of people have heard of it. So if you have migraines, look into that herb. Just throwing that out there. So when I look back at these accounts, if I could go back in time, if I was a time traveler, which we know is impossible, I would also suggest to these people that they take increased B vitamins, especially vitamin B3, niacin. And that would be flush niacin for sure. No doubt about it. Adding these in would be great help to them. Schisandra astringes the Jing. Sean, what is a Jing? Where do I get one? Are they on Amazon? Well, you already have it. And I know you already have Jing because when you don't have any Jing anymore, you're dead. So if you're watching this, you've got that Jing. You just have to preserve it. So Jing is the primal, it's a primal essence. If you don't have Jing, you don't have Qi, and you don't have Shen, which some people pronounce as Shen. We're only born with so much Jing. You don't want Jing. It can actually, it like leaks out of you. So Schisandra tightens up the body so that Jing can't prematurely leave, and then you have a more productive and long life. So what does astringe mean? Well, if a guy is shaving his face and he cuts his face, he'll apply some witch hazel because it tightens the pores, tightens the capillaries, tightens the skin, keeps the blood from leaking out. Yarrow is a great astringent. Red raspberry leaf is a powerful astringent. Red raspberry leaf will stop out of control diarrhea. So Jing is an abstract concept. So let's put it this way. I'll give you an example. People who sweat excessively. The forehead is always moist. They soak their clothes with sweat if they're working out. Oh my God. Schisandra Berry helps to stop this, okay? So this is not an obscure use for Schisandra. It's probably not super well known, but just think of all that sweat leaking out as Jing leaking out of the body. And Schisandra Berry is stopping that. It's slowing it down markedly, which is a good thing. Schisandra Berry is also good for benign prostatic hyperplasia. According to one of my longtime mentors, his name is Mordecai, 56 years experience. If he says it, you can take it to the bank. So what is it about Schisandra that makes all this possible? What's going on inside that little berry? Well, that's a long story. It involves a lot of different people going back to probably the late 1800s. We're talking modern day here. Obviously, Schisandra its value was recognized thousands of years ago, but Schisandra's stimulating effects, tonic effects on human physiology, was first mentioned in a Soviet military journal, I believe in 1945. The Soviets were looking for ways to, of course, increase the performance of their military men, to gain an advantage over any other military force in the world. The Russians knew of literature or reports going back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, detailing hunter-gatherer tribes who used Schisandra berry and seeds to stave off hunger, thirst, prevented exhaustion, and increased night vision. So we can see how this would be attractive to a military in the mid-1900s. Crude night vision equipment was introduced probably 15 years earlier, but still, this is a good thing to have for a fighting force. And the Russian researchers concluded that the Schisandra seed was the secret weapon compared to the berry. They were all about the seed, which I agree with. Either a Schisandra berry extract with lots of Schisandra seed added in, or maybe just the seed itself. Anyways, this led to decades of research on Schisandra berry. One researcher in particular has basically dedicated his life to, I think, 2 or 3 adaptogens. Eleuthero, Schisandra, and maybe Panax Ginseng, maybe Maral Root. But in any case, Schisandra has the ability to protect the mitochondria, has the ability to protect brain neurons from injury, a chemical component of Schisandra, and this is Schisandra chinensis we're talking about throughout this entire video. Schisandra chinensis. One of the chemical compounds found in Schisandra is Schisandrin B. And let me pull this out. That was a 1 in a million. That's never going to happen again. That was a 1 in a million shot. So here, this is a diagram of Schisandrin. Okay, yeah. So this is a Dibenzo Cyclooctadiene Lignan. Just rolls off the tongue. So this is probably the most neuroprotective lignan found in Schisandra berry, Schisandra B. It can protect neurons. It can fix memory impairments, even if memory issues are a result of previous damage. And Schisandrin B will protect neurons against neurodegeneration. Could Schisandra be useful for brain injuries or traumatic brain injury, CTE, chronic, traumatic encephalopathy? If it was me, I'd use it. I'd use it along with, I'd want to bump up the levels of acetylcholine in the brain, and I'd want to enhance the effects of the glymphatic system, which washes your brain while you sleep at night. It is brainwashing in the literal sense of the word. And there's ways to maximize the glymphatic system so that it washes your brain while you're sleeping better. This is huge. Schisandrin B stimulates the expression of heat shock protein found in cells. It's called HSP70 for heat shock protein 70. There's also a heat shock protein 25. So this heat shock protein 70, it's linked to ATP generation, adenosine triphosphate. So there's your increased energy when you take Schisandra berry. It lessens the severity of mitochondrial dysfunction, which occurs to everybody as we age. And this heat shock protein is connected to an increase in cognitive function, abstract thinking. So there's your enhanced mental skills. The heat shock protein enhances antioxidant activity. And then there's a lot of studies. I have this one here. Schisandra Seed, in a clinical study of 96 people, demonstrated the almost complete eradication of general weakness, poor sleep, poor appetite, headaches, and high levels of irritability, no doubt a result of dealing with all the above issues. Muscular force in the hands increased to 2.5 times over the control group. lung capacity increased 16% compared to the control group. And this was with only 15 drops a day for 25 to 28 days. That's not a lot. Powerful stuff. And there's been hundreds and hundreds of studies done on Schisandra chinensis. So this is all just scratching the surface. I'd have to stand here for 12 hours and really get into the chemistry and how it helps, which I'm not going to do. But down in the video description, I'll link some studies for Schisandra chinensis for you. It helps with stress-induced depression. When you have depression because you are completely exhausted, this is a type of chronic stress that wears you and your central nervous system down to a nub. You are fried. Type A personalities have this a lot. When you see dark rings under the eyes, a person sticks out their tongue and the tip shakes like a leaf in the wind. You take a pen light and shine it in the person's eye, and the pupil of the eyeball just can't decide if it wants to constrict or expand, dilate or shrink. It can't make up its mind. So a combination for this would be Schisandra berry and then linden flower or fresh milky oats, which is my favorite herb for the central nervous system. It is, in my opinion, herbally, it is the top tropho restorative for the central nervous system. So Schisandra berry and seeds. This is one of the biggest cheat codes you can find. It's a godsend for a lot of people. And you'll notice all the accounts which I gave today of people being helped taking Schisandra berry and seeds. All of these accounts are from well over a decade to maybe 3-5 years ago. And the reason I went back so far is because you don't really want to suggest an adaptogen or any herb to somebody unless you have a long record of it helping a lot of people over and over again. Or if you know for a fact it has certain reliable actions on human physiology. So if someone tells me today that they took an herb that I have little or no experience with and they give me this glowing review about how this herb helped them, I'm very happy for them. But in good conscience, I cannot suggest it to others right away. It's not fair to somebody. Maybe they've never tried any type of medicinal herb before. And so you don't know enough about it. You tell them it's going to help them. Nothing happens and they never try a medicinal herb ever again. So I like to see how it's going to affect a lot of people over a long period of time before I recommend it. So these accounts that I gave today, they're not flash in the pans. I've proved it to myself and others. Obviously, there's other people have seen the value as well. Amazing value. And anybody doing this work for just at a minimum, maybe a year or two, you're going to see similar results. Restful sleep and diet are still king. Herbs do not replace the need for restful sleep and quality food. It's not going to happen. Go check out my How to Make Your Kidneys and Adrenals Happy video. It explains why we need restful sleep and the basics of how to get it. Enjoy the cheat codes that nature has provided us, but don't use them to continue burning the candle at both ends, because you're just going to end up digging a deeper and deeper hole for yourself. And the deeper the hole, the longer it takes you to get out of it. And I don't want to see that happen to you, okay? That's why I'm putting this information out there. So there you have, we're just barely scratching the surface of our first adaptogen, Schisandra berry and seed. Don't forget the seed. I have no idea when my next video is going to come out, but I trust the information in this video will help you greatly. My name is Sean. I am one with nature, and I will see you in the next video.
因为洗的漏啊，就变高了。我那个人喜欢看这个。Just chop that open.